Okay, so going to be coloring and outlining character from the Atelier series. First thing we have to do is work on the outline. So at the beginning I have my sketch down. This is just the base sketch I used. It's just a very quick torso, arm, shoulders, head, face. Then I went on top and got the sketch done. Have the guns on a separate layer, the main character on a separate layer, and then I usually like to do any of the longer, more complex pieces of hair on a third layer. Alternately, I would also put the face on a separate layer, but since it's only the sketch, I don't really care too much. Then that these sketches are done, drop the opacity and start on our outlines. The outlines, I like to toss stabilization up to 50, and I'm using an A4 size paper, which is, it just makes prints easier if you're trying to print them for like posters and stuff. And I usually draw at 300 DPI. 300 is nice because it gives you all the detail you need, but it doesn't go overboard and completely kill your computer. So my page size is A4 with 300 DPI, and I usually like to outline. This is just the default G pen from Clip with the stabilization up to 50, and I use a pen size of 15. And going in, I usually like to do the main body parts first. So I'll do like the head shape and the clothing. And then after this is all done, I'll jump into, I usually do the face afterwards, and then I'll do the hair last. I've stated in, I think it's a video on YouTube for my processes, or the process of the pictures I do, where I like to do the hair last, because hair is one of the areas that I'm most comfortable, and faces are one of the areas I'm least comfortable. Which means if I need to change the face at all, like rotate it slightly, it's harder for me to do with faces because I have less experience drawing them. But with hair, because I'm more experienced drawing hair, I can change the perspective on it slightly, and it's just more easy for me. Okay, and for this section where you have all this frilly kind of fabric, one thing that makes it a little easier to do is you keep it one line, as you see over here in the reference. It goes up and down, and it's all one line for this main kind of guiding shape. And then you have all of these parallel lines going towards the source of the material. So the source of the material is going to be around the waist area, which would be this section over here. So all of our lines are going to head over that way. So you're going to find the outmost edge, which would be like here, and then drawing a line that moves towards our source of the fabric. So we have one that way. Then we can have one from up here, going in. And we're going to be doing this from each fold. And that'll give us a nice 3D effect. And then for the parts that are off screen, down here, we can just imagine the continuation. It would go down and come back up. So we'd have another line going this way. And then as we see around this area, it kind of loops back into, I guess, into the outside of the skirt. Okay, and that should be the basic shape. The frilly fabric down at the bottom. And now that it's time to color, or not color, but outline the face, I go and create another layer for it. I'm going to zoom into the reference material quickly. And with a lot of the outlining over the sketch is just a guideline. It's not that we're trying to recreate the sketch with thinner lines, but we really are just using the sketch as that base guideline to guide our outline into the right kind of shape. So it's not that we're copying it or tracing over it, it's that we are trying to achieve a final result, and the sketch is helping us get there. And so a lot of the lines that I do have already are going to change, especially on the hair, since over here you can see that the bangs overlap on top of the eyelashes, where on mine they didn't. So we will be changing the shape of that and adding a lot more detail into the hair, as well as the bow and a bit of the headdress hat kind of thing. For eyes, I like to start with just the basic shape. Start with the outline of it. And then once I have the basic shape intact, I'll go and fill it, clean up any edges or areas that didn't get filled, and then I'll usually go around and make sure everything's looking correct. Like right here needs to be touched up a little. Just making sure we have the right kind of shape going on. Right kind of shape, right kind of width. Cleaning up any extra areas. And for this one, I'm going to add just the bottom of the eye. And now for the eye shape, I find a lot of people tend to have trouble here. You really are trying to emulate the shape of a realistic eye. And so with a realistic eye, you have kind of this almond shape. A bit of an eyelid, tear duct, then the iris, and then the pupil. Then you have your eyelid on top, a bit of the eyelid on the bottom, your eyelashes come up, eyelashes from underneath, then you have your eyebrow on top. And so following this kind of eye, we can further add to the shape of our eyelashes and just the eye in general without making it look too strange. So we're still trying to follow this same shape here, but of course without any of the extra pieces. Throw some eyelashes underneath, a few extra eyelashes on top. Not going overboard with this. It is very easy to over process. Maybe pull this section down a little more. Keep it curved. And throw some more eyelashes coming off the side. And then the eyelid is a very important part. Even though it's just like one or two lines, it really does add to the overall, the depth of the face. So we're going to be adding that in here. And then finally going in with the iris. Should be the overall idea for getting eyes in place. Now for the other eye, a lot of people have trouble making the second eye follow the first. There's a really simple way you can get eyes quickly, and it's just a little shape like this. You start with like a U shape, then you curve it along, and you make it almost like a spiral. Or almost like an at, but backwards. And then once you have this shape down, you're just going to be refining it. And then throwing in some eyelashes. and then thickening it up. Then you throw in your eyelid and your eyebrow. That's a very, very simple way to get the second eye correctly. A lot of people have trouble in that area, and that's just one little shortcut that can get you really good results pretty simply, pretty quickly, pretty easily. And then following, this is why perspective is important, because we know that the head is a sphere. We have our guidelines in place. So if we had like a vanishing point set up, probably be around here. Probably a little different. But with perspective in place, we can follow where the bottom of the eyelid should be, or the eyelashes, the edge of the eye. So following that down, you can see that it should come just below that line, which it does. And we can also use it where the top line, we can see that it goes about halfway in between where the eyelashes come out. So we know the eyelash should roughly come up to about here, and that can guide the thickness that we're going to be working with. It can also guide where, so that middle one's a little off, where this corner should be. So the corner, we have it right here, so we know it's roughly just above center between these two lines. So going on and correcting the shape of the eye that we have down. Could be a little tricky. Just try and get it as close as you can. Okay, it should be something like that. Then all that's left to do is thicken it up and fix any of the shapes. This is part of why I do the eyes and the face on a separate layer. If there is anything wrong with the overall shape, like maybe we'd have to rotate an eye or move some things around, we can do that easily without wrecking the outline of everything else that we have in place. And then we add in some extra eyelashes. And then finally, this bottom piece. And again, following that almond shape. And then we have eyes. The eyes look like they work pretty well together. I do need to fix up the shape of this iris. It is a little flat on this side, so I'm just going to try rounding it out a little. And I do use the keyboard hotkeys. I don't use my tablet hotkeys, just there's no real reason to it. It's just what I'm comfortable with. You can use whatever you're comfortable with. But I would suggest using some form of hotkey rather than clicking on everything all the time. It is faster and it does let you streamline a lot. We don't need this layer anymore. Then we go in, we add our eyelid. which is one of the most important parts of the face. Now we have to add in the eyebrows, which in our reference, they're a lot higher than you would normally draw. So I'm going to be lowering them a little, trying to keep the same facial expression, which is just more of a neutral. It should be something like that. And then I like to just fill the eyebrows with black. You can do whatever you're comfortable with, leave them open, try and color them later. I just find in a lot of my pictures I'm always going back in after I'm done coloring and darkening the eyebrows anyways. So just coloring them black here and then fixing them when I come back and color the line art just saves me a little bit of time. And eyebrows, a lot of people can have trouble with eyebrows. If you look in the reference, a lot of it's just like a single line with a lot of line weight towards the center of the face, so it'd be more like that. I like to do this almost teardrop shape eyebrow. That's just what I like doing. So it's almost like a teardrop, but with a pointed edge. And so I do my straight line, which follows the eyebrow shape, and then I come along the bottom. I'll just give it a little bit of width and fill it. And that's what I've done for these two. Coming in with the nose and the mouth. The nose is really simple. The reference, it just uses a dot. I don't really like the dot because it doesn't give the kind of depth that I like in pictures. So I'll go in and just do a little bit of a line. My sketch, it's just a line here. For faces, I like to follow what Shiro Miwa does. And he takes a more realistic approach where he'll actually go through and like draw out the full shape of the nose. Something like that. I think that it's not terrible, it just doesn't fit with what I do. So I kind of take the bottom part of that, and then where it would reach the center, pull it down a little, and then go up from there. And then from this 3/4 view, if you wanted to, you could even draw the bridge of the nose. Bridge of the nose, in a 3/4 view, it usually lines up with the eyebrow. So if you wanted to pull that line down, it would give you a little bit more depth to work with. Or even pull this from here. If you wanted to, you could even throw the nostril in. But the general rule of thumb is the more lines you add to the face, the older the person will look. So it still is a pretty good idea if you're drawing a younger character to stay to the more minimalistic side of things. Now with the mouth, you can see in the reference it is a lot higher than you would normally place it, and it is that kind of cat smirk. Going in, leaving the middle open here, and giving a little bit of the bottom lip, kind of implying that it's there. And that's really a really simple way of drawing faces. Now we can reposition things just a little bit, just to make it fit a little better together. I'm gonna clean up this line here. I'm being a lot more particular than I would if I was just doing something on, or for myself. But I know that the more time you spend on your line art, the less time you'll have to spend on your coloring. It makes things a lot easier and a lot faster. Now that the face is done, actually, I might as well come back in the rest of the things. So like accessories, ribbons, hair, that kind of thing. Or not hair, but the headdress. Things that go on the hair. Whoops, that's an advertisement. I'm gonna replay that. Just listening to the Chrono Trigger OST, but a remix on piano. I'll put a link in the description if anybody's interested. one thing I do is wait for the line art to add in detail. I would recommend doing this. However, make sure you add that detail. There's been a few times that I've saved detailing for the line art section, skipped out on it on the sketching, and I just forgot to put it in. One thing I'm going to change from the reference compared to the final image is I'm not going to make a lot of these ribbons translucent. Instead, I am just going to have them be opaque. It just makes things a little easier for me for the coloring process and speeds things up a little bit. Probably save around maybe 15-20 minutes. It doesn't really change the line art. It just means that, like it would, because we'd have to draw what's behind it. However, it's really the coloring stage. There comes a lot more that you need to do for organization, the order that you put your layers, and how you organize them in folders. Certain folders will prevent certain techniques from working, and it just makes things a little more complicated, but it's not too bad. You get the hang of it. Now we need this. One thing I should mention is with hotkeys, try and make them as simple as possible. What I mean by that is try keeping them in relatively the same area. So for hotkeys for me, I have Q is my main pen, W is the magic wand and lasso, E is my eraser, R is rotate, and then blurring. So I really have just the 4 keys that I need to cycle between, and it keeps my hand in the same position so I'm not stretching all over the keyboard, and it just makes things easier if you have to draw for hours on end. And then the undo button, I actually have it mapped to the top, because on the Wacom pen, you have your little nib, your pen, and this thing, your little buttons over here. I have my top one, to this one, set to Control Z. The bottom one to, I believe it's Control D. Whoops, I saved. I think it's Control D, I don't think it's Shift D. Yeah, Control D. So the bottom pen I use for clearing out selection, and the top button I have for undoing. It just makes things a little more easier so I don't need to worry about my left hand cramping up after hours of drawing and undoing and cycling between tools. Then I think what I did before is because I was working on a couple years ago, had to go out of town, was working on my laptop with my Bamboo, which has significantly less buttons, and I actually mapped the eraser button on the stylus to save. So Control S just saves up a little bit more there. Okay, and with the ribbon finished, we move on to the headdress. This uses the similar idea with doing any of the other frills on the clothing, where we try and keep one line, have it snake its way in between, and then use the same direction to try and get the other edges. However, with hair, the hair is going to be overlapping. There's going to be parts of the headdress that deviate. Oops. A little tricky to get that line in there. Of the headband area. And this would actually need to connect to the headband. Put some little detail in there and then draw the background one. Okay, that should be the clothing finished. Just gonna look around, clean up any lines that shouldn't be there. Just because, once again, it makes the coloring process a little faster, a little easier. Make sure we have closed off edges. Okay, now we can start on the hair. Like the face, I'll put the hair on a separate layer, and then I save. I would recommend saving every few minutes. I have had the power go out while I was working on the drawing a number of times, and it really sucks. Losing like 2 hours of work for no reason. Have to come back, redraw it all. Kind of sucks. So now, looking at the hair, we're going to start drawing it back in. And this is where I need to start making some changes. So I'm going to pull the strand down, go back up. I'm going to try and make it curve in rather than just be a straight line across. And we're going to throw in some extra detailing there. Pull it up, keep it down, continue going that way. And this kind of hair is actually it is pretty easy to draw for the sketch. A lot of what I do is I'll just draw the basic bang shape. Then you start going up with like triangle stuff. Try and have these lines, the second lines, all going towards a similar point. So we'd be going down like that, following the shape of a sphere. And then once we go in, we can start splitting things up. And then from there, you can split them up even further. Add some extra strands to it. That's just really, really simple hair. It's really, really not too bad. This one I'll need to change a little bit. Same with this Still a little too far up. I need to turn off the hair layer actually. Make things a little simpler for me. Because we'll want one that goes between the eyes around here. And that's going to curve up around here. Okay, so this is just going to be the general shape of the hair that I have to work with. I'll be drawing around this rather than going straight off my sketch. First thing we want to do is block in any of the big shapes. Makes things easier for us later. Then when we get to the edge, kind of change the way we're going because we're drawing on a sphere. And with spheres, they kind of curve around. So that's going to be the general shape we're working with. Actually, go in there because this will be this section of the sideburn. Now we can start adding detail to this, start splitting things up. And now that the majority of the hair outlines are finished, all that's left to do is go in, clean some of them up, add a little bit more details, the odd strand here or there, and then we can start coloring. If working quickly, an outline can take me anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, depending on the detail involved and the complexity of the sketch. Coloring should be a lot faster. I have streamlined a lot of my coloring process, which is kind of funny because the first couple of years of drawing for me were improving my final product, making my drawings look better. And then recently, the last year or so, I've only really been focusing on improving my speed. So drawings that used to take me like 2 days of drawing 10 hours each day are only taking me maybe 2 hours to draw. So speed becomes really important. However, first, you really need to make sure you have the quality. Which you can argue that I still don't have, but it's all about improving. As long as you're better today than you were yesterday. So now we're going in, adding a little more detail. It's kind of adding some line weight to certain areas. Makes our line art look a little better, and it makes coloring a little easier afterwards, since we already kind of have this the lighting setup. I kind of call this pseudo shading, just where you're going along your line art, thickening up some areas, and creating a light source. And before I would have added all of the detailing in, however, I don't think I'll need to. I think I can cover that in coloring. Just making sure the lines that are seen underneath here are actually drawn. Creates that overlapping effect, really adds to the depth of an image. And then one thing I like to do with the hair over the shoulder is create these areas of open space that aren't going to get any color, just to show that the hair does split apart there. And I think that's the outline finished. It looks like it. So I will be stopping the recording here so I don't lose any of it. It's been going for 1 hour and a half, so it's an hour and a half with explanation. It's not too bad for an outline with this much detail. The coloring will be a lot of fun because of the different gradients and translucent materials, as well as the metallics on the guns. A lot of different surfaces, a lot of different colors. Really fun to color this one. Yeah, I'll be back with that in just a few minutes.